Okay, folks, we are live. So for those listening at home, welcome to the Live from Sword Coast podcast. My name is Kevin Madison, and I will be your friendly dungeon muser this afternoon. I'm coming to you a little earlier than usual because I was able to get out of the office a little earlier. So I figured I would waste no time, jump on and do my participation for today for the RPG-A-Day event for 2018. For those who are unfamiliar with this is an exercise where we are posting an answer to a different question for every day for the month of August. This is my second year participating in this, and I am getting very close to the halfway mark, so it's pretty exciting. So today's question is, describe a failure that became amazing. And rather than an in-game thing, I think this is a very nicely phrased, open-ended question, so you can kind of interpret it however you like. And the way I'm going to choose to, actually, first off, before I get too deep into this, let me just make sure that we're actually broadcasting, because I have had some issues with this in the past. So let's see. Nope, I am broadcasting, so that is just fine. So the question or the failure I'm going to talk about is actually a failure on my part. It was a game that I had intended to run a certain way, and then it just did not work at the table. But that failure became something really amazing. So the setup for this is that I was running a campaign where basically I was taking the 90s era World of Darkness games. So, and just the first couple of ones. So it was Vampire, Werewolf, and Mage. And I had been running those games quite a bit for some from friends from college who really weren't into like D&D or stuff like that. But that was a smooth enough transition, and there was enough buy-in there for them to be willing to sit down and play the games with us. The setting was I had just picked up not long before the Mask of the Red Death box set for second edition Dungeons and Dragons. This was a Ravenloft inspired product that was basically took D&D and put it in kind of a gothic earth in the Victorian era, end of the 19th century. So I took the adventure out of that, which had a kind of if I remember correctly, it was kind of like a Jack the Ripper comes to Boston vibe for it. I haven't read it in probably about 20 years, so I don't really remember anything beyond that. And this was really widespread use of the internet, certainly pre-Wikipedia, which meant that I was going off of my knowledge of Boston geography was based off of the limited information in the actual rule book. So my plan was to, hey, everyone likes what do you call it? Everyone likes the World of Darkness games, so I'll take those, and everyone will play one of those. So we had like one vampire and one, werewolf, and I think we had a mage in there as well too. I don't remember many of the characters beyond someone was playing I think someone was playing a Toreador mage, or Toreador vampire, which meant that they were very artistically inclined and non-combatant. And one was playing a Nosferatu, which is like this degenerate, disgusting, deformed kind of vampire. And someone was playing a Shadowlord's werewolf, which is kind of like a Russian aristocracy from out of town stuff. So anyway, so they start going, and many of the players who were in this particular session were not like D&D players. They didn't, they weren't super familiar with the tropes of D&D, that like there's a mission before you and you just do that. And this particular adventure, either or a combination of, was not terribly well written in the sense of like it was very railroady, and there's a lot of onus on the players to go out and do shit. And I didn't really do more to sort of help them along that way. I mean, I was like 19 when I ran this, so I mean, I think I'm going to cut myself a little bit of slack here. But basically, like, it was maybe like a 4 or 5 hour session, and the vast majority of the session was just like we got to a point where everyone was really kind of like it was clear no one gave a shit what was going on. They didn't care about the investigation. They really weren't buying into that. They didn't find it interesting at all, and I was getting a little frustrated with it. And then my buddy Chad, who's been on the channel a couple of times, he's an author, and he tends to run more games and play them as well. Chad, who was playing, I think he was playing a Toreador. I think anyway, he was playing one of the vampires. And basically, what he decided to do is to change the game and say, like, all right, and play it the way that vampires played, which is to say that you don't like do adventures, you sort of try and like scheme against each other and the other vampires in the city. So he started trying to blood bond the Shadow Lord, So which is basically to like enslave them through consuming blood. So he had like invited her over to his place to talk about the mission and whatnot. And then as soon as he started doing that, some of the other players started like trying to scheme shit as well too. And I don't, again, like it's been so long that I don't remember the particulars of it, but what started as this really crappy investigative session ended up with a vast majority of Boston, or a good chunk of downtown Boston at least, being burned down as one player was trying to kill the other one. Because one character was playing, I remember now, he was playing his Nosferatu he was kind of like a Fagin style character, where he would he had bloodbound a bunch of orphan kids who were sort of like his eyes in the street and whatnot. But anyway, so it started as this really crappy, me trying to force a bunch of people playing in that game into what do you call it? Into a oh my gosh, what am I trying to say here? Into this crappy like railroaded adventure that really didn't have very good payoff anyway. It was like, the payoff was that like, oh, it's a spirit that possessed it, and it's a spirit that caused Jack the Ripper. So it wasn't really all that interesting anyway. And it's such a fucking overused trope. Like you would think that nothing else happened in the 19th century or late 19th century apart from like the fact that Queen Victoria was the queen and that Jack the Ripper stalked the streets of London for a couple of months. But anyway, that becomes that was what it was intended to be, and it ended up being this really terrific session of everybody like pursuing their own characters' goals and role playing their characters really well and plotting against each other and having a really, really good time doing it too. Like the end of the session was great. We never ended up going back and playing any more of that, but it was a really fun session. Like it ended up being a really, really great time, and it really helped me figure out like what you really should be doing with those games. I had a real hard time figuring out how to actually play or what to do with Vampire, because I mean, largely not because I didn't like read the rules well enough or the books well enough. It's just that at that time there was a big LARPing community and whatnot in Vampire, and put the folks that I met who were in that community at the time seemed so far up their own ass that it made me not want to run the game that way, because it seemed goddamn ridiculous. Like in this very like high role playing, using lots of the vocabulary from the vampires and shit like that. It was very off-putting for me, partly because of association with those the folks that I met who were really into it. And also who were kind of dicks to people who were like casual viewers or casual participants. So up until the time we played that adventure, I didn't really get like, oh, this is what could really happen here. This is way more. This is politics. This is intrigue. It's not just pining for whatever. Not just like acting out a Anne Rice novel. You're actually doing some cool politics stuff. So, and it stuck with me too, because that's always been sort of the lightning in a bottle that I've I thought about trying to recapture every time I go back to those games. And like even telling this story again has got my fucking mind working of like, I could really revisit that idea I had of the Near East vampire, Dark Ages thing. But it says a lot about that particular session that it has that lasting of an impact, that I've forever thought of the potential of those games as being how that session ended up, rather than the clumsy way it went. So that's my answer to describing a failure that became amazing. It became something that has persisted, or rather has prolonged my interest in that particular setting and those particular games for years and years and years, well past. And it's fueled largely my nostalgia buys of most of the World of Darkness, like the 20th anniversary stuff. I'm waiting for Wraith at time of recording to show up, and largely it's because of that one session showing me how good it could be. So anyway, so I guess I'll dedicate this answer to Chad then. Chad, thanks very much for making me spend hundreds of extra dollars that I didn't need to on World of Darkness stuff. So anyway, that is my answer for today. If you want to share, or I guess if you have any thoughts, comments, or questions or concerns regarding this answer, please don't hesitate to leave me a comment in the comment section below, or you can shoot me a tweet at Dungeon Musings on Twitter, or you can shoot me an email at dungeonmusings@gmail.com. Feel free to and that's if you have any comments, or if you want to share your own experience with. So I keep going back to the question because I'm forgetting it as soon as I look away. I've got the retention span of like a shaking Etch-a-Sketch. If you want to describe how your how a failure became amazing, then I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, let's see, tomorrow's question, which would be halfway, nearly halfway. Describe a tricky RPG experience you enjoyed. That's interesting. Tricky RPG experience. I don't know what that would be. I'll have to think about that. So that'll be tomorrow. You may, in closing, you may notice that there are links in the bottom of this video, or the description as well. Those are to the charity fundraising campaign that we're running on the channel called Heroes Save Villages. This is an initiative where we are paired up with SOS Children's Villages International. It's a terrific charity that benefits high needs children or children in high needs circumstances, both in North America and abroad, doing both providing direct benefits to the kids and advocating for their interests on a broader scale as well. The first link will take you through to the campaign where you can donate and you can read more about the campaign. There's some cool rewards that are available there, including for a $100 donation, I will run a 4-hour session for you, whatever game you want to play. And that's for you, for your friends, for whatever you want. And I have one of those sessions coming up in the next month or so, which is pretty exciting. So we're going to be playing some Fantasy Flight Star Wars. And let's see here, what else? Oh, and if you want to know why I set up the campaign, there's a link to the video that I shot describing my thought process for setting up the campaign and for my past with SOS Children's Villages International. That is, of course, all optional. Please don't feel obligated that you have to contribute, but it's a really worthy charity, and every dollar that's donated goes all to them. So I would ask that you just consider clicking through and reading a little more about SOS Children's Villages International and about the campaign. So anyway, with that said, let's wrap it up and get thinking about tomorrow's session. I'm already thinking about tomorrow's gaming. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, folks, and I will see you again tomorrow. See ya.